Henry Johnson woke to the smell of coffee he didn't make. He stepped into his cramped living room, still groggy from the storm that had raged all night, and froze. A woman stood in his kitchen. She wore his old flannel shirt sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee like she owned the place. She turned, and her smile was calm, almost amused. "Your coffee's terrible," she said, "but I fixed it." "Who are you?" "Ella Sterling, CEO of Sterling Properties." She tilted her head slightly. "And if I'm not mistaken, this house belongs to my company." Before we dive deeper into Henry's story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, this story takes some unexpected turns. The night before everything changed, Henry Johnson sat on the edge of his daughter's bed holding a worn picture book they'd read 100 times. Zoe was 7 with her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin. She clutched a stuffed rabbit missing one ear, a garage sale. Find Henry had spent 20 minutes negotiating down to 50 cents. "Daddy, why is our house so small?" Henry closed the book slowly. Outside, wind rattled the old windows and the first drops of rain began to tap against the glass. The storm warnings had been on the radio all day. "A house doesn't need to be big, baby girl," he said. "It just needs to have people who love each other inside it." Zoe considered this with the seriousness only a child could muster. "But Tyler at school says his house has 4 bathrooms. We only have 1. "Does Tyler's daddy read him stories every night?" "I don't know." "Well, I do. Every single night." Henry kissed her forehead. "That's worth more than 3 extra bathrooms." Zoe giggled, and the sound filled the small room like sunlight. Henry pulled the thin blanket up to her chin and turned off the lamp, leaving only the glow of her nightlight casting shadows on the cracked ceiling. He stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her settle into sleep, and felt the familiar weight that lived in his chest. 4 years since Linda had passed. 4 years of doing this alone, working jobs that broke his back, fixing other people's broken things, while his own life held together with duct tape and stubborn will. The house groaned as the wind picked up outside. It was a small place in a rundown neighborhood owned by some big property company whose name he saw on the rent checks every month. Sterling Properties, the kind of company that bought up old neighborhoods and waited for the right moment to tear them down. But it was home, the only one Zoe had ever known. Henry walked to the kitchen, poured himself a glass of water, and watched the storm roll in through the window above the sink. Lightning split the sky, and thunder followed so close it shook the walls. That was when he heard the crash. Not thunder, something else. Metal screaming against metal, then a heavy impact that seemed to come from just down the street. Henry grabbed his jacket and ran out into the rain. The scene was chaos. A silver sedan had wrapped itself around the old utility pole at the corner, the same pole that had been leaning for years that the city never bothered to fix. Smoke poured from the crumpled hood, and even through the downpour, Henry could see the orange flicker of flames beginning to lick at the engine. He sprinted toward the car, rain soaking through his clothes in seconds. Through the shattered driver's window, he saw a woman slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious, blood running down her forehead. The fire was spreading. Henry didn't think. He grabbed a rock from the roadside and smashed what was left of the window, reaching through to unlock the door. The metal was already hot. He could smell gasoline mixing with rain and smoke. Come on," he muttered, unbuckling her seatbelt, pulling her dead weight across the center console. She was wearing expensive clothes, a silk blouse now torn and stained with blood. Her heels had come off somewhere in the wreck. He dragged her out just as the flames reached the dashboard. 20 feet away, then 30, and the car's gas tank caught with a boom that knocked him to his knees. Henry shielded her body with his own as debris rained down around them. When he looked up, the car was a fireball and the woman in his arms was still breathing. He checked her over quickly the way he'd learned in the army years ago. The cut on her head was shallow, already clotting. No obvious broken bones. She was lucky, impossibly lucky. But now, what Henry looked around, The street was empty, everyone hiding from the storm. His phone was inside the house. The nearest hospital was 30 minutes away on a good day, and tonight the roads were flooding fast. He'd seen the water rising on his way out. The woman stirred, mumbling something he couldn't make out. He made a decision. Henry carried her back to his house, kicking open the front door and laying her gently on the old sofa in the living room. Water dripped from both of them, pooling on the worn carpet. "Daddy." He turned. Zoe stood in the hallway, clutching her one-eared rabbit eyes wide. "It's okay, baby. This lady had an accident. Daddy's helping her." "Is she going to be okay?" Henry looked at the unconscious woman on his couch. In the dim light, he could see she was maybe mid-30s with sharp features and dark hair plastered to her face. Even unconscious and bleeding, there was something about her that suggested power control. The kind of person who wasn't used to being helpless. "She's going to be fine," he said. "Go back to bed, sweetheart. I'll take care of everything." Zoe hesitated, then padded back to her room. Henry heard her door click shut. He found his first aid kit under the bathroom sink, the one he kept stocked, because he couldn't afford doctor visits for every scrape and cut. He cleaned the wound on the woman's head, applied butterfly bandages, checked her pupils with a flashlight. She was responsive, just out cold. Probably a mild concussion. Her clothes were soaked through, torn in places spotted with blood and glass. She'd catch pneumonia if she stayed in them. Henry went to his closet and pulled out an old flannel shirt and a pair of sweatpants. He set them on the chair beside the sofa along with a towel, then wrote a note on a scrap of paper. "Clean clothes if you need them. Bathroom is down the hall." It was all he could do. He wasn't about to undress an unconscious stranger. Before going to his room, he noticed a leather briefcase that had somehow stayed with her, probably tangled in her arm when he'd pulled her out. The clasp had come open and papers spilled across his floor. Henry gathered them up without reading them, but he couldn't miss the logo printed on every page. Sterling Properties. The same name on his rent checks. He looked at the woman on his couch with new eyes. An employee, maybe, or an executive. Someone important enough to drive a car that cost more than he'd make in 5 years. It didn't matter. She was hurt and he'd helped her. That was the end of it. Henry put the papers back in the briefcase, set it beside the sofa, and went to bed. Sleep came hard. The storm raged outside, and every few minutes, he'd hear the woman stir, mumble something, then go quiet again. Twice he got up to check on her, making sure she was still breathing, that the bleeding had stopped. Around 3 in the morning, the storm finally began to ease. Henry drifted off with the sound of rain fading to a gentle patter on the roof. He woke to sunlight streaming through his window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Linda used to make coffee every morning, and sometimes in the space between sleep and waking, he could still smell it, still hear her humming in the kitchen. But Linda was gone, and he lived alone with Zoe, who was 7 and couldn't reach the coffee maker. Henry got up slowly, his body aching from the night before. He walked down the short hallway to the living room, turned the corner, and stopped. The woman was standing in his kitchen. She'd changed into his flannel shirt, the sleeves rolled up to her elbows, his sweatpants hanging loose on her frame. Her hair was still damp but combed back, and the wound on her head had been rebandaged with supplies from his first aid kit. She must have woken early, found the note he'd left, and made herself at home while he slept. Now she was making coffee like she owned the place, not fumbling through cabinets, not apologizing for the intrusion. Just standing there calm and composed as if waking up in a stranger's home after a car accident was a minor inconvenience. She turned when she heard him, and her smile was the kind that had probably closed 1,000 business deals. "Your coffee's terrible," she said, "but I fixed it." Henry stood there trying to process what he was seeing. "Who are you?" "Ella Sterling." She poured 2 cups, slid one across the counter toward him. "CEO of Sterling Properties." The name hit him like a second shockwave. Sterling Properties. The company that owned his house. The company whose logo was on every piece of paper in her briefcase. And if I'm not mistaken, Ella continued, picking up her own cup, this house belongs to my company. Henry didn't touch the coffee. His mind was racing, trying to recalculate everything. The CEO, not just some employee, the actual CEO, standing in his kitchen wearing his shirt. You saved my life last night, Ella said, her tone shifting slightly, something almost human flickering beneath the polished surface. The car caught fire. I remember the heat and then nothing and then waking up here. Anyone would have done it. No, Ella shook her head. They wouldn't have. I've lived long enough to know that most people would have called for help and watched from a safe distance. You ran into the fire. Before Henry could respond, he heard small footsteps behind him. Daddy. Zoe appeared at his side, still in her pajamas, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She looked at Ella, then at the shirt Ella was wearing, and her face lit up with the uncomplicated delight of a child. You're wearing Daddy's favorite shirt. It looks pretty on you. Something shifted in Ella's expression. The corporate mask slipped for just a moment, and Henry saw something underneath. Surprise, maybe. Or something older, deeper that he couldn't name. Ella looked at Zoe for a long moment, then knelt down to the little girl's level. Thank you, she said softly. Your daddy is a very brave man. He saved my life. Zoe beamed with pride. I know. Daddy saves everybody. Ella stood, and when she looked at Henry again, the mask was back in place, but not quite as solid as before. We need to talk, she said, about how I'm going to repay you. Henry felt something tighten in his chest. The way she said it, like a transaction waiting to be completed. Like his kindness was a debt that needed settling. There's nothing to repay, he said. Ella smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Everyone says that. No one means it. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a checkbook. Ella wrote a number on the check without hesitation. Her pen moved with the confidence of someone who had never worried about money, never counted coins at the end of the month, never chosen between groceries and electricity. She tore the check from the book and held it out to Henry. He didn't take it. $10,000, Ella said, for saving my life. I'd say that's more than fair. Henry looked at the check, then at Ella. Zoe was still standing beside him, watching the exchange with curious eyes. I didn't save you for money. I know. Ella's smile remained fixed. That's what makes this appropriate. A gift, not a payment. You can use it for your daughter, for this house, for whatever you need. The way she said it, like she was doing him a favor, like she had already calculated exactly what his life was worth and written the number down. Zoe, Henry said quietly, go get dressed for school, baby. But Daddy, now sweetheart. Zoe looked between them, sensing the tension she couldn't understand, then shuffled off to her room. When they were alone, Henry spoke carefully. I don't want your money, Ms. Sterling. Ella. I don't want your money, Ella. She tilted her head, studying him like a problem she hadn't anticipated. Why not? Because kindness isn't a transaction. I pulled you out of that car because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected something in return. Ella set the check on the counter between them. Everyone expects something. Maybe not consciously, but there's always a ledger. I prefer to keep mine balanced. Then your ledger is your problem, not mine. For a moment, something flickered across Ella's face. Confusion, maybe, or frustration. Henry couldn't tell. A black SUV pulled up outside, and Ella glanced through the window. My assistant. I called while you were asleep. She gathered her briefcase, her ruined clothes from the night before, stuffed into a plastic bag. Keep the check. Think about it. You have my number if you change your mind. She walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at him. You're an interesting man, Henry Johnson. I'm just a man. Ella smiled, but this time it seemed almost genuine. That's exactly what I mean. She left, and the house felt strangely empty without her. Henry picked up the check, looked at the number one more time, then tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Zoe emerged from her room dressed for school in the clothes Henry had laid out the night before. "Is the pretty lady gone?" "Yes, baby." "Is she coming back?" Henry thought about the way Ella had looked at him like he was a puzzle she needed to solve. "I don't know," he said honestly. That afternoon, after walking Zoe to the bus stop and spending 4 hours fixing a broken water heater for an elderly woman across town, Henry came home to find a package on his doorstep. Inside was a doll. Not just any doll, but the kind that cost more than his monthly grocery budget. Porcelain face, real fabric dress, the sort of thing displayed in glass cases at department stores. The card attached read, "For Zoe, thank you. V." Henry stood in his doorway holding the box and felt something twist in his gut. When Zoe came home from school, she found the doll on the kitchen table. Her eyes went wide. "Daddy, where did this come from?" "The lady from this morning. She sent it for you." Zoe reached out to touch the doll's dress, her fingers trembling with excitement. "Can I keep it?" Henry wanted to say no. Every instinct told him this was wrong, that accepting gifts from Ella Sterling was the first step down a path he didn't want to walk. But Zoe's face was so full of joy, and she had so little. "Yes," he said, "you can keep it." 3 days later, Ella returned. Henry was in the backyard, repairing a section of fence that had blown down in the storm, when he heard a car pull up. He walked around to the front of the house and found Ella stepping out of her SUV dressed in clothes that probably cost more than everything he owned. "You didn't cash the check," she said. "I threw it away." "I know. I checked." Henry leaned against the porch railing, arms crossed. "So you came all the way here to confirm I'm not interested in your money. I came to understand why." "Why what?" Ella walked closer, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "Why you won't take it. Everyone takes the money, Henry. Everyone. I've been in business for 15 years, and I've never met a single person who didn't have a price." "Then maybe you've been meeting the wrong people. Or maybe you're lying to yourself about what you really want." Henry felt his jaw tighten. "You don't know anything about what I want. I know you live in a house that's falling apart. I know you work 3 jobs to keep food on the table. I know your daughter wears clothes from thrift stores and plays with toys from garage sales." Ella's voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. "I'm offering you a way out. Why won't you take it?" "Because it's not a way out, it's a leash." The words hung between them. Ella's expression shifted, the corporate confidence cracking just slightly. "A leash," she repeated. "You give me money and suddenly I owe you something. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday you'll remind me. That's how it works with people like you. People like me. Rich people. Powerful people. People who think everything can be bought." Ella was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer. "What if I told you I understand exactly how you feel? I'd say you're lying. My father was a handyman. Did you know that?" Ella climbed the first step, then the second, until she was standing on the porch almost at eye level with Henry. "He fixed things for a living. Toilets, sinks, electrical wiring. He raised me alone after my mother left. We lived in a house just like this one." Henry didn't respond. "He died when I was 12. Heart attack. We couldn't afford the ambulance in time." Ella's voice remained steady, but something in her eyes had changed. "I swore I would never be powerless like that again. I built everything I have from nothing, Henry. I know what it means to be poor. I know what it means to be looked down on. Then why do you treat people like transactions?" The question landed hard. Ella looked away toward the street, toward the SUV, waiting to take her back to her world. "Because transactions are safe," she said quietly. "You know exactly what you're getting, no surprises, no disappointments. That's no way to live." Ella turned back to him, and for just a moment the mask was completely gone. She looked tired, lonely, human. "No," she agreed. "It isn't." She left without another word, and Henry watched the SUV disappear around the corner. That night, he sat on Zoe's bed, watching her brush the hair of her new doll with careful, loving strokes. "Daddy, why don't you like the lady who gave me this?" Henry considered lying, giving her some simple answer that would satisfy her curiosity. But Zoe was too smart for that. She always had been. "It's not that I don't like her, baby. It's complicated." "Is it because she's rich and we're not?" The question hit him harder than he expected. "Where did you hear that? Tyler at school says rich people are mean. But the lady didn't seem mean. She seemed sad." Henry looked at his daughter, at the gentle certainty in her young face. "What makes you think she's sad?" "Her eyes," Zoe said simply. "They look like your eyes when you miss Mommy." A week passed. Henry tried to forget about Ella Sterling to return to the rhythm of his ordinary life. Wake up, get Zoe ready for schoolwork, whatever jobs he could find, come home, make dinner, read bedtime stories, sleep, repeat. But the letter changed everything. It arrived on a Tuesday, official-looking, with the Sterling Properties logo in the corner. Henry opened it at the kitchen table while Zoe ate her cereal. "Dear resident, this letter is to inform you that the property located at your address has been scheduled for demolition as part of the Sterling Properties Urban Renewal Initiative. All residents must vacate the premises within 60 days. Henry read the letter 3 times. The words didn't change. 60 days. They were tearing down his house, his home, the only home Zoe had ever known. "Daddy, what's wrong?" He looked up at his daughter, at her innocent face, at the doll Ella had given her sitting on the chair beside her. "Nothing, baby. Finish your breakfast." But it wasn't nothing. It was everything falling apart. 2 days later, Ella appeared at his door again. She looked different this time, less polished, more uncertain. She held a folder in her hands, and she didn't meet his eyes right away. "You got the letter," she said. "You knew." "I knew." Ella took a breath. "That's why I was here. The night of the accident. I was inspecting the neighborhood, making the final decision about the demolition." Henry felt something cold settle in his chest. "So you came to look at what you were about to destroy." "I came to see if it was worth saving." Ella finally looked at him. "And then you saved my life, right here, in front of the house I grew up in." The words didn't register at first. "What?" "This house, Henry. The one you're renting. I lived here until I was 12. This is where my father raised me. This is where he died." Henry stared at her, trying to reconcile what she was saying with everything he thought he knew. "I was going to tear it all down," Ella continued. "Erase it, start fresh. But then the accident happened, and you pulled me out of that fire, and I woke up in my childhood home being cared for by a man who reminded me so much of my father that I couldn't breathe." She held out the folder. "I can't stop the demolition. The board has already approved it, but I can help you. A new house anywhere you want. All your debts paid off. A trust fund for Zoe's education. Everything." Henry didn't take the folder. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity, it's what guilt money you feel bad about tearing down your father's house, so you want to buy yourself some peace by taking care of the man who happened to be living in it." Ella's face tightened. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair." Henry stepped closer, his voice low and hard. "You think you can write a check and make everything okay? You think money fixes what you're doing to me and every other family in this neighborhood. I'm trying to help you. I don't need your help. I need you to understand that some things can't be bought. My dignity, my self-respect. The fact that I saved your life because it was right, not because I wanted something from you." Henry shook his head. "You keep coming back here offering me more and more, and every time you do it feels less like gratitude and more like you're trying to prove something to yourself." Ella's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "What am I trying to prove?" "That you're not the villain." That tearing down poor neighborhoods and displacing families doesn't make you a bad person because, look, you helped one of them. You made it right for one of them." The words hung in the air like smoke. Ella stood very still. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "My father would have hated who I've become." Henry didn't respond. "He worked his whole life to give me a better future, and I built an empire that destroys places like the one he loved." Ella looked at the house, at the peeling paint and the sagging porch and the patched roof. "I don't know how to be anything else anymore. I only know how to acquire things, control things. I don't know how to just give." "Then maybe it's time you learned." Ella met his eyes. "How? I can't answer that for you. But I can tell you this." Henry pointed at the folder still in her hands. "That's not giving. That's buying silence, buying forgiveness. If you want to do something real, figure out what actually helps people, not just me, everyone." He went inside and closed the door. That night, Henry sat in Zoe's room long after she'd fallen asleep. He watched her chest rise and fall, her small hand still clutching the ear of her rabbit, the expensive doll from Ella sitting on the shelf above her bed. In 60 days, they would lose this house. He had no savings, no backup plan, nowhere to go. And for the first time since Linda died, Henry felt tears running down his face. He didn't wipe them away. He sat there in the dark, letting himself feel the weight of everything, and asked himself the question that had been building for days. Could a poor black man change his fate without losing himself in the process? Could he accept help without becoming someone else's project, someone else's redemption story? He didn't have an answer, but somewhere in the darkness he thought of Zoe's words. The lady seemed sad. Her eyes look like your eyes when you miss Mommy. Maybe Ella Sterling wasn't just trying to buy her way out of guilt. Maybe she was drowning too in her own way, in her own gilded prison. Maybe they both needed saving. Morning came gray and quiet. Henry woke with dried tears on his face and a heaviness in his bones that had nothing to do with sleep. Zoe found him in the kitchen staring at a cup of coffee gone cold. "Daddy, your eyes are red." Henry looked at his daughter standing in her pajamas with her one-eared rabbit tucked under her arm. She was watching him with that quiet knowing that sometimes made his chest ache. "I'm just tired, baby." "You were crying." It wasn't a question. Zoe climbed onto the chair beside him, her small hand reaching out to touch his arm. "It's okay to cry. You told me that when Mommy went to heaven." Henry pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. She smelled like strawberry shampoo and childhood, like everything good he had left in the world. "I did say that, didn't I? Is it because of the letter, the one that made your face go all tight?" He should have known she'd noticed. Zoe noticed everything. "Yes," he admitted. "Some people want us to leave our house." "Why? Because they want to build something new here." Zoe was quiet for a moment, processing this the way children do with a directness that adults had long since abandoned. "But this is our home. Where will we go?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart, but I'll figure it out. I promise." Zoe pulled back and looked at him with steady, trusting eyes. "The Lady Ella. She's one of the people who wants us to leave, isn't she?" Henry couldn't lie to her. "Yes, but she gave me the doll. And she looked so sad." Zoe's brow furrowed. "I don't think she's mean, Daddy. I think she's just lost." The words hit Henry somewhere deep. Lost. That was exactly what Ella was. Lost in her money, her power, her desperate need to control everything because she'd once been powerless. "You might be right, baby girl. Then maybe you should help her find her way, like you helped her when her car was on fire." Henry looked at his daughter, at this small person who somehow understood things that grown-ups spent lifetimes missing. "When did you get so smart?" Zoe grinned, her worry melting into mischief. "I watch you, Daddy. I learn." That afternoon, Henry did something he never thought he'd do. He went to Ella's office. The Sterling Properties building was everything his neighborhood wasn't. Glass and steel, 30 floors of corporate power rising into the sky. Henry walked through the lobby in his work boots and faded jeans past security guards who looked at him like he was lost, past receptionists who asked 3 times if he had an appointment. He didn't, but he wasn't leaving. Finally, after nearly an hour of waiting, he was escorted to the top floor. Ella's office was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, and the furniture probably cost more than every house on Henry Street combined. She sat behind a desk that could have been a small aircraft carrier, and when she saw him, something flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or hope. "Henry, I didn't expect to see you here. I didn't expect to come." Ella stood, walked around the desk, and leaned against its edge. She was wearing her armor again, the expensive suit, the perfect hair, but her eyes were tired. "If you're here to tell me off again, I probably deserve it. I'm not here for that." "Then why?" Henry looked around the office at all the trappings of success, at the emptiness beneath the shine. "I've been thinking about what you said, about your father, about this being the house where you grew up." Ella's expression tightened, but she didn't interrupt. "You said you don't know how to give, only how to acquire and control." Henry met her eyes. "I think that's true, and I think it's killing you." "That's quite a diagnosis from a handyman." "I've fixed a lot of broken things in my life. I know what damage looks like." Ella's mask cracked just slightly. "So what do you suggest, that I give away my company, become some kind of saint?" "No. I suggest you stop trying to save one person and start trying to help everyone." "I don't understand." Henry walked to the window, looking out at the city spread below. Somewhere out there was his neighborhood, his street, his house. The house where Ella's father had raised her. The house she was about to destroy. "You offered me a new home, paid debts, a trust fund for Zoe. All for me, just me, because I happened to save your life." "Yes. What about the other families in the neighborhood? The ones who didn't pull you from a burning car?" Henry turned back to face her. "Mrs. Patterson on the corner, who's lived there for 40 years. The Reyes family with 3 kids under 10. Old Mr. Williams, who fought in Vietnam and has nowhere else to go. What happens to them?" Ella was silent. "You can't buy your way out of guilt by saving one person. That's not redemption. That's just making yourself feel better." "Then what is redemption?" Henry walked back toward her, stopping a few feet away. "You said the board approved the demolition. Can you stop it?" "No. The contracts are signed. The investors expect returns." "Can you change what comes after?" Ella frowned. "What do you mean? Tear down the old buildings if you have to, but build something that helps the people who live there. Affordable housing, community centers, job training programs. Don't just erase the neighborhood, replace it with something that honors what it was. That would cost millions more than the original plan. The board would never approve it. You're the CEO. You own controlling interest. I saw it in the papers in your briefcase that night." Henry held her gaze. "You have more power than you pretend. The question is whether you're brave enough to use it." Ella stared at him for a long moment. "You're asking me to risk everything I've built. I'm asking you to build something that matters." The silence stretched between them. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "If I do this," Ella said slowly, "I need help. Someone who knows the neighborhood, knows the people, knows what they actually need, not what some consultant thinks they need. You're asking me to work with you. I'm asking you to work with me, not for me, with me, as an equal." Henry thought about it. The offer was different now. Not charity, not guilt money, but a partnership. A chance to actually change something. "I won't take a salary," he said. "I'll volunteer my time, and I keep living in my house until the renovation reaches it. Then I move to whatever affordable housing you build, same as everyone else." "That's absurd. You could have so much more." "I don't want more. I want enough. And I want it earned, not given." Ella shook her head slowly, but she was almost smiling. You really are the most stubborn man I've ever met. My daughter keeps me honest. She has a way of seeing through everything. Ella extended her hand. Then we have a deal. Partners. Henry shook it. Partners. 6 months later, the neighborhood looked different. The old houses were gone, but in their place rose something new. Affordable apartments with modern amenities. A community center named after Ella's father. A job training facility that had already helped dozens of residents find work. Henry had been there every day, leading the renovation crews, translating between the corporate planners and the residents who actually lived there. It wasn't easy. There were fights, setbacks, moments when he thought the whole thing would collapse. But they kept pushing. Now he stood in front of his new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom unit in the building that had risen where his old house once stood. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, safe. A place where Zoe could grow up without worrying about leaking roofs and broken windows. Zoe ran out the front door, her one-eared rabbit in one hand, her expensive doll in the other. Daddy, Ella's here. Henry turned to see Ella walking up the path. She looked different these days, less polished, more real. She wore jeans and a simple blouse, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. The corporate armor was gone. How does it feel? She asked, stopping beside him. Like home. Ella smiled. It was genuine now, nothing calculated about it. The board thinks I've lost my mind. Stock price took a hit. 3 investors pulled out. Do you regret it? She looked at the community center, at the children playing in the new park, at the families moving into apartments they could actually afford. Not for a second. Zoe tugged at Ella's hand. Want to see my room? Daddy painted it yellow because that was Mommy's favorite color. Ella glanced at Henry, asking permission with her eyes. He nodded. I'd love to, sweetheart. The two of them disappeared inside, and Henry heard Zoe's excited chatter echoing through the hallway. He walked to the wall of the community center where a dedication plaque had been installed. The Robert Sterling Community Center, in memory of a father who taught his daughter that hard work and kindness matter more than wealth. May this place serve those who need it most. Henry had helped write those words. Ella had cried when she read them for the first time. He went inside his apartment and found Ella and Zoe sitting on the living room floor, the expensive doll propped up between them. She says the doll's name is Hope, Ella said. Zoe names everything. Her rabbit is called Lucky. Because he only has one ear, Zoe explained seriously, but he's still the best rabbit ever. Ella laughed, and the sound was warm, unguarded. Nothing like the woman who had stood in Henry's kitchen all those months ago, offering checks like Band-Aids. Later, after Zoe had gone to bed, Henry and Ella sat on the small balcony, looking out at the lights of the neighborhood. I want to show you something, Ella said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a familiar piece of fabric, carefully folded. Henry recognized it immediately. The old flannel shirt she had worn that first morning. I had it framed, Ella said. It's been hanging in my office as a reminder. A reminder of what? That the best things in life aren't transactions. They're gifts, given without expectation. She held the frame out to him. I think it belongs here now, with you. Henry took the frame, looking at the faded flannel behind the glass. It seemed like a lifetime ago that he'd found her wearing it in his kitchen, making coffee like she owned the place. I'll hang it in the living room, he said, right where Zoe can see it every day. What will you tell her it means? Henry thought about the question, about everything they'd been through, about what he'd learned and what he still didn't understand. I'll tell her that sometimes the things that surprise us the most become the things that change us the most. And that real dignity isn't about refusing help. It's about knowing who you are no matter what anyone offers you or takes from you. Ella was quiet for a moment. Your daughter is very lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She's the one who told me you weren't mean, just lost. Smart kid. The smartest. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one above the city. Tomorrow there would be more work, more challenges, more moments of doubt and frustration. But tonight, there was peace. Henry thought about Linda, about what she would say if she could see them now. He liked to think she'd be proud that he'd stayed true to himself, proud that he'd found a way to help without losing who he was, proud that their daughter was growing up knowing that kindness and dignity were worth more than any check. The flannel shirt hung on the wall. A woman had worn it on the strangest morning of his life. Now it was a reminder that even the most unexpected encounters could lead somewhere meaningful. Not everything had been fixed. Some things never would be. But that was okay. The best things in life weren't about fixing. They were about growing. Together. And Henry Johnson, single father, handyman, stubborn guardian of his own dignity, was finally ready to grow. If this story touched you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in Henry's place? Would you have taken the money or held on to your pride? And if you enjoyed this journey, consider subscribing to the channel. There are more stories like this one waiting to be told, stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary choices. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.